Hello and welcome back to Astrology 101 for Skeptics. This is part 2. So the next thing you might be wondering is, why is your sun sign not what you thought it was? When you get a consultation in the Indian Vedic system of astrology, the kind that I practice. For example, if you thought you were a Scorpio, how did your sun end up one sign behind, in Libra? Blame it on the Dark Ages. Astrology was developed to a fairly advanced science by the ancient Greeks and Romans. Tables of planetary placements covering several decades were written down by the Greek mathematician Ptolemy to make calculations easier. At the time, these tables accurately marked the sun's position on the spring equinox to be at 0 degrees of Aries. They also knew that the Earth orbits around the sun, not the other way around, and they could even predict when eclipses would happen. But then, as the new religion of Christianity gained more and more power until it eventually took over the Roman Empire, in its theocratic determination to eliminate all prior knowledge and science and make its dogma the only one that anybody should ever need, the science of astrology and all its documentation was lost or destroyed. To practice it was heresy or treason, punishable by death. It was even heresy to state that the Earth orbits around the sun, when church dogma was dependent on the idea that the Earth, not the sun, is the center of all cosmology. So when an eclipse swept over England during the reign of Richard III, for the first time in 400 years, nobody understood what was happening, and mass panic ensued.
Meanwhile, a funny thing happened while nobody was looking: the precession of the equinoxes. Imagine that the Earth is a giant spinning top, spinning very, very fast in one direction, while its axis is turning very slowly in the other direction. So while the axis may have been pointing smack at 0 degrees of Aries 2,000 years ago, it's been slipping backward ever since, inching its way through Pisces by 1 degree every 72 years.
Well, after 1,000 years of this, what do you think is going to happen? By the time the planetary tables were rediscovered and people started attempting to reconstruct astrology, they were working with calculations that were way out of date. By the time John Dee was consulting for Queen Elizabeth, the axis had retreated 20 degrees backwards into Pisces. The new astrologers of the Renaissance, up to the present day, went on the presumption that astrology was true, while completely ignoring Ptolemy's own words. Towards the end of his life, he wrote to the effect of,
"I notice that my observations don't line up quite with my calculations. Would somebody please fix this after I'm gone?"
He had a hunch that something was slipping even then. But either he didn't know or ran out of time to figure out how to factor in a course correction that would keep the calculations accurate over longer periods of time.
By now, in the early 21st century, the discrepancy is 24 degrees off. And most people born in the 20th century discover to their great confusion that their own horoscope placements are behind where they thought they were by 23 degrees. In another 400 years, The Earth's axis will make it all the way back to the 29th degree of Aquarius on the spring equinox.
So, whichever sun sign you think you have, odds are 75% it's actually in the previous sign. Same goes for all the other planets. That's why the Indian system is so much more accurate. It's an unbroken tradition. They never lost it. They have always been tuned in to where the planets actually are.
On the spring equinox, the sun is not at 0 degrees of Aries. It's at 6 degrees of Pisces. The sun won't make it into Aries until 3 weeks later, in the middle of April.
That's the biggest paradigm shift you have to make when switching from the Western to the Indian system. Lose the idea that the zodiac is stapled to the start of spring, and you'll start getting horoscope results that make a lot more sense. It's like upgrading from a dial-up modem, remember those, to 100 gigabit Ethernet. Now don't get me wrong, the equinoxes and solstices do still matter for purposes of planting, harvesting, and livestock herding here on Earth. But earthly time and cosmic time are two separate cycles. And it's cosmic time, also known as sidereal reckoning, is what you want to look at to see the karmas of individual people's lives. And that's where the rising sign comes in, which is even more important than your sun sign. What's the rising sign, you may ask, also called the ascendant? For the answer, click through to part 3 of this series about rising signs and houses. I'm Rosanna Tufts of wisdomofthecosmos.com. We'll see you in the next video.